Look, the way this debate has turned out, there are a few things that need to be clarified. Let me start by what each team brought today. OG came up here and talked about how you lose humanity when you gain people's trust and then break it. Opening opposition kept talking about how the body assures you that people are dead. Closing government comes up and says you need to destroy every single scrap of that person's humanity. But you know what is common about all of these frames? They didn't have any analysis at all about why exactly and what the repercussions are when you take or when you don't take away a particular person's humanity. And we think that's a danger here. Because they come up here with all this rhetoric, they come up here, and I know because all their speeches started with, they killed lots of people. And really, where do their arguments lead? What are the pragmatics of their cases? What are the implications? Nothing. What did we bring to you from closing opposition? I haven't started yet. The very idea that when you ground this in the real world, it is impossible to destroy every last scrap of humanity. It is impossible for the state to just arbitrate who lost enough trust and who didn't. And it is impossible to just say that looking at that body means everything is okay. Because why must we always assume that funerals and eulogies are good? Because my partner came up here and talked about narratives, right? About how sometimes there are awful people and you can go to their graves and spit on it. That's why the Christmas Carol is such a classic, because Ebenezer Scrooge's funeral was horrible. We think that when can you really take away a person's humanity? The answer is never. And government just wants to forget these things never happened. We think their sheer unresponsiveness to my partner cost them this debate and cost them the championship. But first, two questions I need to ask before I justify everything as a whole. Number one, how does the state better serve justice? Because first speaker and second speaker and third speaker and fourth speaker coming from government comes up here and talks about how funerals and eulogies personalize and legitimize all these people. Well, aside from that very obvious rehash, we say that offending humanity in itself, we say that that doesn't merit taking away these rights because that simply isn't just. People are still afforded rights always. That's why even when you try these dictators, even when you try people who commit war crimes, you give them rights and you give them due process. Something they didn't respond to at all coming from my partner. You should have taken our video eyes. But even if they talk about this idea of offending humanity, we say that things like Mein Kampf, we say that they're supporters, we say that all these other scraps of their humanity still exist, right? And you can't destroy every last scrap. So all of OG's harms about, well, the rallying point will still exist. We think it's an insane burden they took upon themselves to prove that all these things would just disappear. So, it's not just about the burial, it's about the state of humanity. And this leads me to the second point under that issue, about the idea of commensurability. Thank you for standing, you may sit now. The idea of absolution of sin and all these other things, right? Because they talk about how crimes restrict all your rights. And since you committed the hugest crime, you must now have no rights. First response, but they're dead. So we must ask, now that they're dead, do you still grant them all these other things? My partner came up here and talked about how justice is not retroactive. That's why even after generations and generations will remember this, you don't punish their children. You don't make laws and then overturn verdicts because of it. You don't punish the children of people who have been declared guilty. Because the state recognizes that punishing people after that original sentence, punishing people after the original punishment is just plain unfair. But even if they are a tribe, right, let's engage their worst case. We think that the state still moves from where it used to be, which was eye for an eye, right? That's why you don't rape rapists and all those other things. We think that's why, even if they don't try them, you still don't want the victims and the state to stoop down to the level of somebody who committed all the atrocious crimes, insert all the boo-boo things they said at government. And that's what Kat came to you about this issue. The idea that that burial is the closing chapter and that justice must be served in life. Because when these people are dead, they are vulnerable and they cannot speak. So you lower the humanity of everybody who takes part in that process. Because when you commit that crime and deprive him of his humanity, that itself is a crime against humanity, and they have not justified why the state and everybody else should create and do that
human beings, even if they did something bad, share common humanity. That's why we spend so much time at Prime Minister, who has yet to be responded, analyzing why he's inadequate for war criminals.
The issue about whether or not you can lose your humanity, although we obviously know the answer is no. Because OG desperately tries to justify that crimes against humanity are different. Because 1, they're premeditated, 2, you use all your resources, and 3, you get the trust of lots of people and betray it, without actually explaining why that was mutually exclusive at all. Because it's not different from other crimes, right? We think all crimes are crimes against humanity to different degrees. But at the same time, we say even if you want to create abhorrence, even if you want to say it's wrong, because all crimes harm humanity, you say you can't lose it. Because you also lower that threshold of humanity, something exclusively brought out by my partner that we didn't respond to. Because when you lower that threshold of humanity, it's especially dangerous considering the state is the one arbitrating it, right? Why is it the US and Che Guevara's body? Why not the US's own soldiers after committing these war crimes? We think it's not fair that you can arbitrate who and who cannot lose their right to humanity, who can lose their humanity, because it is inalienable, because it is universal. If they want moral abhorrence, just think of what they're doing. You're talking about dead people who are vulnerable, who cannot speak, who have all this rhetoric ahead of them. You punish the crime and not the person. That's why you have trials, because what you want to be seen as abhorrent is the crime that he did, but not himself. And when you're dead, as my partner said, it is the ultimate equalizer. You are all human. There is a shared humanity. So you create an abhorrence instead for that humanity. And we think that even if future generations will be affected, we say exactly, that's why you cannot deny genocide. That's why you cannot just hide it somewhere and pretend it never happened. Because that's exactly what government is doing. They're hiding away these crimes. They're pretending that these people never existed. And for all these reasons, they never serve justice. They never justify why humanity could possibly be taken away. And they never clearly explain why exactly it is in a better form to actually deny people of the burial right. For all these reasons, closing opposition takes this debate.